Hello, this is Niswander, and you're watching the Nowman Show. I am here with Roman Lights in Paris, France, right now. He is part of the Gilets Jaunes movement and so much more, and we're going to get into that. Roman, thank you for being on the Nowman Show.
Thank you for inviting me, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
And tell us who you are and what your organization is and what you're doing right now.
I'm just introducing myself as a simple citizen, which is having the skill to be able to speak a little bit English, which is not that common in France, unfortunately. And I'm a part of that Yellow Vest movement that started this huge, let's call it evolution, a few weeks ago now, like a month and a half ago now, 6 weeks. And I basically made a video a few weeks ago sharing that message that has been viewed by millions of people already. And this message is all about understanding what is the true reason why people are doing that Yellow Vest movement and not what the media are trying to reduce it to. So yeah, it's my pleasure to have an opportunity to spread that message across the world.
So originally, now, to go back for those who may not know, first of all, Yellow Vest movement. Of course, I like to use the French words myself personally because I love culture. So Gilets Jaunes. So when I say Gilets Jaunes, I'm talking about Yellow Vests for those who are watching. How did this all start? What was the basic trigger of it?
So the basic trigger was basically Macron has been elected a year and a half ago by I think 25% of 40% of people who voted for him. So he probably has about 25% of the French population who voted for him, but we still call that a democracy, which is a little bit ridiculous when you think about it. 25% voting for someone, which means that 75% of the people didn't vote for him, but we still call that a democracy. This guy, which has been put in this position by the elite, the banking elite, just did an amazing job to unsatisfy everyone in France. In a year and a half, he did that amazing work to upset the young people, the unemployed people, the working class. He basically only satisfied the rich people, that's it. And they are not the majority in France. So after a year and a half of us being robbed, and he dismantled public elements, public structure of France, and sell it to the private and reduced privilege here and there, and increased privilege to the wealthy people. People were starting to get used to it. And then suddenly one day someone said, yeah, let's choose the 17th of November as the day when we're going to start our protest. And to the massive surprise of all of us, we actually found that we were thousands and tens of thousands outside. And that's how we realized that we were not alone. Like, we were all together upset about the situation. Most of the French people doesn't really know why or what's going on with the European Union and what's really happening internationally. They just see that their salary is like the capacity to survive is getting harder and harder months after months. They don't really understand deeper the global economy and international relationship and all that, and how the whole global economy is entangled and in war with the poor and the middle class now. So yeah, they just get out, and the best way that I explain what happened is that it's like you're playing poker game for years and years and years, and you just end up losing and losing and losing and losing, and you're losing your dignity, and you're losing your hope, and you're losing everything, until one day you just basically stop, you freeze, and you're starting to look around and be like, hey, there's something wrong. There's just something wrong. I don't know what's wrong. I just feel that there's something wrong. And I think this is what the Gilets Jaunes is all about.
Yeah, and it's interesting as you talk. I mean, it seems to, well, it is a global phenomenon. The wealth inequality, and the fact that the general public here in the United States also, I would say, tends to be ignorant of not only current events and what's going on around them. As you said, the connection to the global economy. They also don't understand historically how we got here. There's still this misconception about what even, socialism and communism are in this country. People automatically think those things, and the general public now thinks that automatically just means authoritarianism. That's it. There's no other example of it, even though there's fire departments and police departments and public parks and libraries and things like this. They don't think, well, that's different. No, it's not. That's how it works. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to define it. So yeah, it's the need for education, and also to make the connection to other people, and we can go in later and elaborate more on the need for more compassion and understanding of just very basic, fundamental, things like that. So when people went to the streets, people were probably surprised then when there's thousands of other people to feel the way I do. So it was kind of like that same kind of vibe that happened with the Occupy Wall Street movement. But what's different now to me is what I want to get into as we evolve this story. But the first thing that I had come across was 42 demands, and I have on my phone here some information. A friend of mine had said, my wife is French, and in France, said there's a misunderstanding of the Yellow Vest movement. She said, I am seeing a lot of wrong information, so I prefer to explain a bit better. It is not just the tax on fuel. It is mostly that the Macron government cut the retirement paycheck for everybody, including my parents, and they increased gas and electric bills in all homes. All taxes were increased, property taxes, habitation, city taxes, income, except that the taxes for the ultra rich were cut. Yeah, that same thing happened here, essentially, in the United States. Macron does not care for the ecology. He did not increase gas tax to protect the earth, but to make more money. And a lot of us understand that too here that are activists. One of the best French environmental activists, Nicolas Hulot, I don't know if you know that, was ecology minister under Macron, but Hulot resigned because it was impossible to do anything sincerely for the environment in the government. So he gave huge tax breaks to the very richest and then tried to put the climate burden on the working class, so the working class are rioting. So they're not protesting globalism, they are protesting oligarchy and the domination of the very wealthiest. We live under class warfare and we lay down and take it. That's essentially what this person in Paris said.
It's a good summary. It's a good summary of the reason why people are upset. But it doesn't really address the core issue of what's going on, which is a really awakening of the failure of those so-called democracy. Because when the people try to protest against things like that, what the word assisted to was huge scenes of violence that the media tried to put on behalf of the Yellow Vest, but the videos are quite explicit, showing cops beating up openly, using weapons against civilians, all young people, no matter which age, no matter which class. They used, I don't even know the numbers, like thousands of tear gas bombs over the last few weeks.
Rubber bullets also, shooting rubber bullets and things?
Yeah, rubber bullets who caused a lot of damage. I think we're now more than 10 citizens who lost an eye.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because of those so-called peaceful weapons. But yeah, there's a lady who died, old lady who died from a lacrimal, like a tear gas shot in the face. Yeah, we had like hundreds of hurt people, and now like we're filling up complaint against the government. Even like the Genève, I don't know the terminology, like they basically said that what the France is doing is going against all the international laws of peaceful protesting, because we are peaceful protesters. Like we just have mums and dads, and outside of Paris, most of the protests, I would say 99% of the protests are quite well organized and they're all peacefully happening. But in Paris, we know from like certain source that the government actually paid some policemen to wear yellow vest to create chaos, so they can then blame the yellow vest doing it, because anyone can wear yellow vest. It's actually quite easy to be an infiltrated cops and beating up people and hitting and being very violent in purpose in front of the camera. And we have so many example of them. We film them, like they don't even hide themselves anymore. They, like, a second before they're wearing yellow vest, and then a second after they're putting the police symbol on the arm and remove the yellow vest. They even do that openly, because they know that they control the media, so they can share whatever they want. The people would believe it. So I think this is what most of the French people who were complaining about the reason that you just exposed realized, is that there's something much, much deeper that is wrong in our so-called democracy. Because if people who are peacefully protesting are beating up this way, like, what does it tell about our freedom of expression and the country of the human right? Like, what this is all about. Like, so yeah, I think this is what really people are starting to realize now. But it's a long process. It's a long process, because we've been educated for so long to believe that if you disagree with someone, just go out and scream and yell, and then they will do whatever they want anyway. So, and when you do that for like a year, 2 years, 10 years, tens of years, and you still see the things getting worse and worse and worse and worse year after year, you're like, there's something wrong in the way we've been educated to manifest our disagreement. And this is where the referendum initiated by the citizen is coming on the scene.
Yeah, and so now let's get into that, actually, because it's evolved into referendum initiative.
Initiated by the citizens.
So exactly, explain to us how that started and actually what that is.
So, like, in simple term, it's called a RIC, RIC. So referendum initiated by the citizens. It's a terminology that already exists in many places in the world. Like in Australia, they call it the CIR, citizen initiated referendum. There's many expression of it in many countries. I think even in California and in America, they have a form of a referendum, but it's not exactly like the core essence of the RIC is the capacity from citizens to trigger national referendum from their own initiatives. So that's that simple idea. So referendum is when you ask the rest of the population to vote for an idea. So normally we are electing people to make decisions on our behalf, but what is new with this idea is that we can keep people in power, like they can actually be elected and they can keep their seat and be parliament or senators or whatever. But we want to have the power, the constitutional power, to express our opinion, not in a peaceful and protesting way, but to impose that legally to the power in place. So, like, so far, the only people upset or disagreeing with this idea are people who think that people will be stupid enough to make stupid things. But the truth is that we all have common sense. Why? Because normal people are directly exposed to the mistakes that they're doing. And when they do something stupid, they get consequences and they learn from that perspectives. But when we're starting to study how the elite is operating, like the elites are doing really stupid things, but they don't learn about it because they have nothing to lose, because it's always the population which is paying for them. And this is actually defining a psychotic behavior. Like a psychopath is someone that basically is doing the same mistake over and over and over and over again and never learn from it because they never really get to face the consequences of its action. And this is what is creating that sensation of impunity that this elite is getting through, and never really learn anything because they never face the consequences of that. Like the only thing that they're facing is, oh, we're not going to be re-elected. Like after years and years and years, and now they're getting into a point where whoever is not re-electing, they're going to find ways to recycle them into whatever businesses in the private and in the public. So those people are really starting to create that kind of caste that is controlling the whole system. And we haven't yet realized that the only reason why those people are proliferating is only because we are powerless. We cannot stop them legally. Like, and that's such a simple statement to realize. Like, the whole idea of the RIC is realizing that we have been programmed to be powerless constitutionally. The fact that in the constitution, we, the people, doesn't have a legal tool to stop the people in power, to control them if we want to, is the reason why, no matter what we're going to do in the street, no matter how the Occupy, for example, movements were programmed to fail, is that they didn't make this analysis that if you're not changing the constitution and give the people the rights, the legal right to trigger a national referendum, then you will be condemned to be controlled by the people who just going to tell you what you have to do and what is good for you. And that's what the RIC is about. The RIC is about realizing that simple idea that we have been programmed to be powerless, not because we are powerless, because we are the power. We are the true power. The power doesn't come from the elite. The elite most of them couldn't even cook an egg, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
The true power is coming from us. We are the people making the value, creating exchange, producing value. And the fact that we do not have our word to say except going through our representatives says a lot about what we can do. So yeah, like, what I'm saying most of the time is that when you want to buy a car, you know, like, you educate yourself about the value of the car. Like, you go and you check the tire and check the brand and you check the security, the safety and everything, the kilometers, the motors, everything. When you want to buy a house, you do the same. Like, you're not an expert in buying a house, but you're checking the plumbing, the electricity, the location, the market, the street, the environment, everything. When you want to educate yourself, when you want to go and do study, you also do the same research, like which university is the best, everything. But as soon as we're starting to talk about your future or the organization of the society that you're a part of, then you don't have your word to say. It's all about people who are wiser than you or more clever than you who can make decisions for you. And this has to stop. People need to understand and realize that, no, it's not true. Maybe you are not, like, no one on earth has all the wisdom, has all the knowledge. And this is why the people in power today are surrounded by teams of people who are guiding them and giving them advice and everything like that. So we all agree on the fact that not one person can actually do anything, but a group of people can actually do something pretty cool. So why not extending that to the whole citizens, like the whole nation? Why are we thinking that a group, an oligarchy, a group of people can do better than all together? Like, this is just a ridiculous idea when you think about it.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all, because like we know today that people like Trump or people like Macron doesn't work by themselves. They have teams of people for everything that they do. So we already recognize that teamwork is necessary. So why we could not have a right to ask to the whole society, what do you think about this idea? Instead of voting for people who are going to make our decisions on our behalf and not being accountable for them. That's the whole idea of the RIC.
Well, do you think that the French people are, well, they don't seem to be as complacent, maybe, as in general as the U.S. population, but do you think there's a lot of ignorance about what you're talking about, or just the fact that people don't realize that they do have the power within themselves? They can empower themselves, and together it actually can make a difference. Do you think the French people now are starting to wake up to that fact that, hey, you know, I'm an individual, yes, because that's what's touted in the system, which dominates, you know, but at the same time, we're a part of a whole, and isn't that greater than the individual? You know what I mean? So again, another common sense factor. And speaking of teamwork, are there plans right now to start creating a specific kind of referendum initiative for the unification in the process of this?
So just to give you a bit of story about the RIC is something that exist in many countries, like Switzerland, for example. I know you know Switzerland pretty well, and Switzerland is famous to be quite a balanced society, like where things are working pretty well. Why are they working pretty well? Because over there, like when you have 100,000 people who come together, they can, like if 100,000 people sign a petition, for example, they can ask like the rest of the population, what do you think about this idea? And if the idea is validated, then it's automatically validated into the law. And that's that simple idea that, like when you realize that Switzerland is using that and the rest of the world, every democracy, so-called democracy, because the word democracy mean power to the people, demos people, kratos power, so power to the people. But which power are we talking about? Because if the people don't have the powers, so therefore, like we have the power, but we basically give it away. Is that what we call democracy? Because that's not what the spirit of democracy is about. The spirit of democracy is that people should be allowed to exert their power upon the nation or the specific domain. And so the RIC is existing for years already, and it's only in France since probably 8 years then a teacher, a law teacher, economics teacher, Etienne Chouard, starting to really question the validity of our so-called democracy after what happened for the Maastricht referendum. Like basically, we've been asked by the president to do a referendum. So we can, like the French people could say, do you want to go into the European Union or not? And the French people said no. So then they changed the text and move a few dots and comma here and there. And then a few years after, from the Lisbon Treaty, they didn't ask the referendum to the French people anymore. They actually asked the parliament, what do you think about that text? And the parliament said yes. So the French people said no, but then the parliament said yes. And the parliament is normally the emanation of the people. And the parliaments normally should express the people's opinion. And that's when that teacher realized, but wait a second, like if the power comes from the nation and the nation, if the nation said no and the parliament said yes, so what are we talking about? Like where this democracy is? And that's how he's starting to study the origin of democracy and came back to the Greek democracy and really found out that it was actually the opposite of what we're living today, like that the citizens of Greece were actually military, like they were all weaponized because they need to be able to fight against the oppression, and the oppression will not only come from the outside, it can actually come from the inside.
That's
which
right.
is something that the Americans learned. Like they learned that they have to keep their weapon, because as long as they're going to keep their weapon, they're going to be able to keep their government under control, which is now getting a bit more complicated, of course. But yeah, the fact is that today, if we want to stop the government in France, we are not weaponized. So the only tool and weapon that we have is peaceful protest. And the peaceful protest, which is a weapon that has been used by Gandhi in India, actually worked pretty well. Like It doesn't have to be violent. We actually found out that by being peaceful, the impact, especially in a social media epoch, can have much more power and much more leverage than frontally attacking the system. Because first of all, we are not organized to be able to fight against so powerful people and trained. And second of all, like it's useless. It's useless to be violent because it's a waste of energy. It's a waste of resource. Like thinking that bringing war to countries can actually bring peace. Like this is just an outrageous idea, because nothing can be further away from truth. When you bring war to a country, you bring chaos and disorder. You never bring peace, ever. Like violence and force is never the solution.
That's right.
And that's what we're going through now. That's what we are realizing now. So just to give you a number, like a month and a half, when I was asking to people, have you heard about the RIC? I would say that probably less than 1% of the French people in the street knew what it was. 6 weeks later now, I think we're getting close to 80% of the people who know what the RIC is. So that don't all of them fully understand what it is and how we're going to implement it and everything in details. But at least in a month and a half, we came from 1% to 80%, which is like tremendous.
Wow.
It's really tremendous.
How long did it take to get
6
to
weeks. 6 weeks because now like the media are talking about it. Everyone is talking about it because that's the main revendication. Like instead of wasting our time asking for, oh, we want more solidarity, or we want climate change, or we want like more, like whatever, instead of wasting our time begging for solutions to be implemented, we only want to be powerful. That's that simple idea. Like, why begging to be listened, or to ask to the people? It's that tricky situation where you have the power and you gave your power away, and now that you gave your power away, you're begging to be listened.
Right.
You're like,
That's
it doesn't make any sense.
I love
I just
the way
have
you
to
present that.
get the power back. That's it. I just get my power back, and then I will apply that power. That's it. Like, let's be clever for 1 second, because and I'm sorry to repeat it again and again, because
No, it needs to be
I have so many
repeated.
people. I have so many people asking me questions online, and every time they're like, okay, what do you think about the left and the right and blah blah blah? I say, guys, who cares about the left and the right? You don't understand that this is all division game. You don't understand that this is just wasting time. Get the power, and educate your brothers and sisters, and you're going to see if the left and the right would still exist in 10 years from now. Like, the left and the right are only emanation of that division pattern, like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, left, right, religious, science.
Yes,
It's all
that's
about
right.
separation. It's all about, like, why do we have to choose? When you get the
Yeah.
power, like, you can have your opinion, and then if the majority of the population follow you, great. If not, then yeah, you need to work on your education. We don't have to fight around those ideas. That's what I'm saying. Even immigration and racism and everything, you want to think that there's a hierarchy in the race, that's your business. Like, do whatever you want. I don't care. I don't have to fight you, as long as we are all powerful and we're all free to express our opinion. Okay, if someone think that some race are higher in the rank or whatever, that's their problem. I don't care.
Right.
This is not my opinion. That's not what I think. But if you want to think that, that's not a problem, as long as you will not apply that to the nation without me saying my word. Okay, but today we are powerless, and we're fighting against each other to know who is right. And you're like, wait a second, it's ridiculous.
We all live here together, you know.
We all live together. So we are not here to fight together. We are here to fight against the people who are putting those situations in place. So, like, the people who are putting immigrants before people, like, nationalist interests. Like, I don't think anyone is racist. But if you live in a country and some people believe that we need to bring more people before your own interests, or they're afraid that the people are going to take more than they actually give, they're going to have those level of reaction. But if you have a referendum initiated by the citizen, you can control those people who are putting those rules in place. And if you disagree with them, you can actually say, no, I don't want that. Right. And we're just going to ask, if the majority of the people said no, then it's going to be no. So therefore, there would be no point arguing about, is it right or wrong? The majority would say no, so therefore it would be no. If the majority say yes, it would be yes. And if you disagree with the majority, then work on the education. Give your argument.
Exactly.
Explain why or how we should do it differently, and then trigger another national referendum based on a different idea or different concept, to see if by changing that thing, maybe we can solve that problem. You know, like the issue of immigration, environment, like animal distress and everything like that are only symptoms.
Right.
And instead of attacking the cause, which is political decisions, we're all focusing on the symptoms and saying, oh, look, like, there's a problem here. It's like you have a cancer, and instead of changing your diet and doing exercise and eating better food and everything, you basically remove the cancer, hoping that it's not going to come back. And it's, you know, like, it's all those patterns, those ridiculous things that we're doing, and over and over and over again, hoping that it's going to change. And that's, again, psychotic.
Yeah, and it creates all the problems then create, you know, massive layers on top of each other, to where it gets so convoluted and so confusing. It's understanding when it's understandable when people are confused about,
especially when there's so much energy lost fighting each other.
That's right.
Like, all this energy that people are wasting, and I see that every day. Like, I'm posting something explaining, guys, the yellow vest has no politics, no union, no religion. It's peaceful. It's and they're like, but what do you think about the extreme right?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah.
repeat. There's no politics. There's no religion. Oh, but what about the ultra left is infiltrating? Blah blah blah. I said, okay, yellow vest is no politics, and you have to
Right,
repeat again and again
right,
because they don't
right,
get it.
right.
They're like, we're going beyond that division, and we incorporate every citizen.
That's right.
How do you qualify a citizen? Is a citizen a dangerous person, or is the citizen the smallest common denominator that can connect all of us?
That's right.
And how can you be in war with citizens? You can be in war with immigrants, you can be in war with poor people or rich people or blah, 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 but you can't be in war with yourself.
Yes.
So that smallest common denominator is what is connecting all of us. And it's so powerful because, first of all, there's no leader. And because there's no leader, then the government cannot really deal with us, because what they're going to try to do is to reduce like the group at its smallest expression. So therefore they can deal with that. And whoever those representatives are going to say, they're just going to work with them. So therefore all the other are going to agree, which is the union concept or representative concept. But when the whole people said, no, we don't want to have any representative, we want the referendum initiated by the citizen. How do you deal with that? How do you manage this? Like, you are going into a situation that the government were never prepared to work with. There's no people that can emerge and speak on the behalf of anyone, because no one wants to be represented anymore, because no one trusts represented anymore. And the only revendication that we're bringing is we want to be powerful. And if you are Democrats, if you're truly a Democrats, then you need to accept what we're saying, because you're saying that you get our power from us. So if you're saying that you get our power from us and you refuse to give the power to us back, then therefore you cannot say that we're in a democracy. You have to say we are in a dictature. So it's a real checkmate, political checkmate situation. There's no escape.
So
They can.
is there any sense of organization that is created around the RIC idea? In other words, like a presence where, okay, a group of people are coming together to share ideas about, let's say, what a referendum is. Like, for instance, in Switzerland, in 2015, 2016, around that time period, there were two referendums that really got my attention. One was for universal basic income, and the other one was to like maximum income for CEO, like of big corporations, like where, you know, they could only make so many times more than the lowest paid worker. I'm not sure what it was, maybe 50 times as opposed to 500 times. Those referendums then went to, once they had the 100,000 signatures, they went to national vote. They both got about 40%. So the goal was to at least get the issue out there for people to think about, you know, something different than what was happening, or to address a particular need. And that for them was successful, having a 40%. We got a similar thing here. We have what we call propositions here in California. We also have measures that you can put, like if it's a city kind of measure. We had a measure actually in the city of Los Angeles. I couldn't vote on it because I don't actually live in the actual city. I'm in a suburb of for a public bank, and about 43% voted for that. So if that gets put on the ballot again in 2020, we might get a public bank in Los Angeles, which would be huge. So it's a concept that I get it. I totally get it. It requires people coming together and creating organizations for certain referendums, certain ideas. But also, I'm also concerned about bringing people together that have these different ideas, because that's one of the problems that we have, I think, here in California and around the country, is you got this group working on this, and you got the people here, you got the Black Lives Matter, you got the environmental people, you got the union people, you got like the teachers are going to have a big strike coming up, the Los Angeles Unified School District, they're going to have a big strike. And they already had like tens of thousands of people in marching a couple weeks ago. So there's different groups, and they're great. It's great that they're out there and they're doing their thing, but there has to be, my focus, I think, is trying to build coalitions and bring people together and talk about the fact, okay, yes, you can have this issue to work on, but then you also need to see the bigger picture, right? Which connects the city of Los Angeles. Then you need to think about connecting the bigger picture, which connects the United States of America. And then you need to think about even the even bigger picture that connects the globe as a whole. And I've thought about this a lot, and I've talked to people that have thought about it even more than me. People like economist Richard Wolff, Democracy at Work, who's been studying economics and particularly Marxist economics for since the 60s, right? And I've also talked to Dr. Jill Stein, who was the presidential candidate for the Green Party here for 2 times. And I've talked to climate scientists here locally that I got access to, earth scientists, they now call themselves. And I've talked to, journalists and things that have been, around since the 60s, things like that, who have a lot of stories to tell globally. And so just thinking in terms of how do you bring people together? I think in this country, Bernie Sanders, I don't know what your views are of Mélenchon and Le Pen, but I think that's secondary, obviously, to, if not less, in importance to, RIC, for instance, and getting people together to start organizing. But I think unity is the next step. Getting people to, what we called an Occupy, create affinity groups, and then, different groups based on different issues, but don't be separate doing your own little things, right? Do your own little things, just like you're an individual, but go out and socialize and connect with people and have meetings. And I think that's what the Democratic Socialists of America is doing here in Los Angeles. We have thousands of people now gathering in different cities all over the Los Angeles area, and then they do come together too for bigger meetings. This is an example of what can be done, and this needs to happen on a national basis. And I think Bernie Sanders, or there's at least one other politician that they seem to be practicing what they preach as progressives. Some of them I don't trust. I don't know if they seem to like money more than they like people, and I always am very skeptical of that. But on a national basis, I don't know if you've heard of DM25 International, the Democracy in Europe Movement 25. Have you heard of Yanis Varoufakis? He's the former finance minister of Greece. And if you know the story of Greece, Greece got even worse than France and Spain and Portugal, the worst end of the EU and the IMF central bank's austerity, to where people have been losing their pensions essentially, to pay for basically bailing out the financial institutions when they can, do whatever they want. So he had, when Syriza party was a left party, they got elected into power 6 months into their I guess you could say administration. The EU basically put pressure on the Prime Minister Tsipras that we know you really have to continue the austerity policies. And when Yanis Varoufakis said, "No, wait a second, no, that's not why the people elected me. I'm not doing this anymore," and he walked out. So it's a famous story. He wrote a book about it, and now he's just writing books about bringing people together and what to do to change the system globally. So he's got the DM25, which is there's different people in different European countries. I think there's somebody in France. I'm not sure. I have to do some research on that. But they're approaching the European Union Parliament in a much different way, because all the entities in there represent individual countries. Well, he's creating a coalition of people from different countries with a progressive agenda to have a party in the parliament there. Brilliant. And they have other ideas as well that they're putting forward. And then on top of that, he created Progressive International, which he started to bring people, progressive, like-minded people together globally, including the Sanders Institute. So he got Bernie Sanders and his wife's attention, because Bernie Sanders' wife runs that institute, and she's smarter than he is, even, I think. So there's people from Canada. There's economist Jeffrey Sachs. Who else did I see? Someone from Ireland representing the UK. I didn't see anybody from France there, but I think Canada. But this is an idea that can bring progressive ideas together and get people talking, get people, what can we do together? And I think the RIC would be a great inclusion in the DM25. That's just my opinion. And then for us to all stay connected as an international coalition through Progressive International, because there are different groups that are coming together. Again, I concur with you on the right-left thing. It's so much more fundamental than that. I think we really need to focus on compassion and just the whole of our global society, because our environment needs the attention, and that's something where we're all globally connected. So there's a connection that can happen there, I think, with the climate crisis. And I think climate crisis is a kind of a better way to say it than climate change, because climate change happens over millions of years of time. But climate crisis, points out that there's something else to take a look at here, which, and I always go back to this basic thing. I mean, literally, because I'm sure it's everywhere around the globe now. When I grew up in Middle America, Ohio, Indiana, Oklahoma, I remember seeing, and this is as a teenager, I remember seeing many lakes, streams, and rivers just filthy, with scum and chemicals in them, and looking around all the trees and the birds and everything and thinking, not that long ago, this must have just been absolutely just beautiful, just pristine, and, what happened, and I knew on some level, again, common sense, that humans had something to do with that. This isn't natural, right? I think everywhere around the globe, people can have that kind of connection with nature, and they understand something is terribly wrong here. So if we can, as we educate ourselves, we can educate others. We can come together, as with RIC, create referendums to present to our countries. We can also come together representing our own countries and create global initiatives based on, let's say, something like climate crisis, right? Or transitioning to solar, wind, geothermal, or hydropower systems, or whatever, things that have a global solution for these problems, and then connect the dots to what you were talking about as power. What are I know that's kind of a long-winded statement there, but what are your views about some of these ideas, or all of these ideas?
It's hard to speak on the behalf of others. So I don't know this movement that you mentioned before. So it's hard for me to say anything about them. I believe that the RIC has to be applied on the people who has an interest and a connection to the land. Yes. So for the people who lives in France, for example, they should have a direct right as citizens living on site and being connected to the land for years and generations. Sometimes they have a direct right to speak on the behalf of their ancestors and whoever they represent. And if we unlock education, if we give access to proper education, and just by putting a RIC in place, asking for separation of the power and the media, for example, or the power and the education, or if people get involved into a new method that can be implemented very quickly, but are not, because today there's a global agenda to dumb down people's intellect. So because it's easier to manage for them. If you have dumb people, it's much easier to manage than if you have clever people who are informed and who get access to education. So yeah, we need to occupy all those space. The RIC needs to be in all matters, which means that you can occupy the health aspect, the educational aspect, the economical aspect, the political aspect, everything. We should have a right to say our words in all those things because we are directly concerned. That as simple as that. Again, I'm getting back to common sense. Why are we giving our power away and then complaining about that. Why are we not getting back our power? On the idea of going into the parliament, some Gilets jaunes wants to create a list, the party, the yellow vest party, to go to the parliament, the European Parliament. But again, why? We don't need the European Union to represent us. We need us to become powerful. So the whole idea is not about like doing the same mistake as before, which is putting in place people in powers so they can be corrupted by lobbies and whoever, like dark forces who would like to control the masses through their representatives. We need to spread that power back to the people, because you can corrupt a small amount of people. You can't corrupt millions of people. You can only corrupt them by education, by corrupting their brain and corrupting their hearts. But you cannot corrupt them with money, or they would be actually quite happy that you do that, because it would mean that everyone would be millionaire. See what I mean? So
that's right.
So you can't really play that game with the RIC. You can only play the corruption game with that representative democracy. And we don't want that. We want participative democracy. We want to be able to participate to that democracy process and express ourselves, instead of just sitting there and waiting for people to tell us how they're going to cook us. So I can't agree with putting in place a party, because the whole idea is to actually destroy the parties. Like when people get powerful, then why, like the parties become useless? Why do you need a party if you can actually speak on your behalf? If you will actually have a real vote, like your voice would actually matter. So why would you need someone to represent you? You know, like, because like institution doesn't require like representation all the time. You know, like Belgium, for example, they didn't have a government for a year and a half. And the country didn't even know that. Like,
wow.
Most of the world didn't even know that. Like,
when did this happen? A few years ago?
2 years ago, yeah, 2 years ago. Belgium didn't have a government. No one even noticed this. Why? Because governments are here to put new laws in place and stuff like that, which are not always useful. Like most of them are actually quite useless, and they have to invent new laws, which are 99% of the time detrimental to the people. So like if we would basically just put in place a simple legal system, and we would just implement some new laws based on new innovation or new technology or new discovery, then we would actually didn't really have to change the whole system. Like we would just vote here and there every 3 months, for example, for a new law or for a new opinion based on a new discovery, based on a new knowledge, and we will just move in this direction. Because today the power represents many aspects. They represent the justice, represent the executive, the legislative, the constitutional, and it represents the administration. Normally the power should just be in place to guarantee that the administration is working. All the rest should go back to the people. All the decision making and the legislative process should be governed by the people. We just need the system to check and control that everything is working properly. We don't need them to tell us what to do. We just need them to do what we ask them to do. Like we are the employers. We are paying the salary. We are producing the value, the economy, the work, the goods and services. We are the one doing that. We are the one in power. We are the employers. They are the employees. But if you have a business and your employees come to you and say, "Oh, sorry, buddy, I can't do that," like what should every employer that is a little bit sane should do? Should do, okay, let me teach you a little bit a few things. Like if I'm telling you to do that, you have to do it. And if the guy says, "No, I won't do that," say, "Okay, fine, you're fired. Get out."
That's
if you're
right.
not competent to do what you've been elected for, then get out.
Right.
And this is apparently what that Greek guy did, but he's an ultra minority over there. Like the people who are putting in place, first of all, they're getting your vote, but they are not elected by you. They're elected by the people who paid for the campaign.
That's right. I think you make a very good point, because a lot of great points. I want to wrap this up because I appreciate your time. I'm an advocate for worker cooperatives or a cooperative economy. That's basically when I was talking about economist Richard Wolff earlier. Democracy at Work focuses on that at this point, although we're going to expand and grow into different areas, which I think RIC could be. Anyway, we can't talk about certain things just yet, but the main thing we're focusing on is worker cooperatives, because it's a model that, you know, where the workers are the owners, they make all the important decisions together, one person, one vote. They still do their regular job, whatever that is, goods and services, could be offices, stores, or factories, whatever, but they do it democratically. And when people say, well, that can't work, I say, Mondragon Valley, Spain, okay? And get back to me if you think it can't work, you know, or Emilia Romagna region in Italy, or the Bay Area of San Francisco, Oakland. I interviewed some of the people from Arizmendi Cooperative Corporation just recently at our national co-op conference. So people think this can't work. You know, they don't know about it, obviously. So back to the point of education, you know, when people see active examples of these things actually working, then it does trigger some things in the brain. I can speak from my own personal experience. I know a lot of people can, and it changes you, and you can't go back to being ignorant anymore. So this is another reason why I think we also talk about changing the system. Because, you know, why don't we talk about how to organize our enterprises differently in the first place, so therefore the wealth is distributed much more fairly in the first place, right? Because it has to start with the system. You can't expect somebody else to do that for you. Why do we think that a group of people making all the decisions outside of your workplace are going to know what's better for you? How, again, it's why did we allow this kind of thing to be, you know, the status quo? What's the model that's supposed to be the only model that works? Obviously, that's propaganda. It's not the only model that works. As a matter of fact, we're seeing that it really doesn't work all that efficiently, because when you take compassion out of the process, when you don't put people before profits, then obviously you can look throughout history. That's why feudalism ended. You know, it's the same thing. And now here we are again. What have we learned? We need to take these things that we've learned, make the changes. So it's not going to be a perfect system. I mean, I've seen the flaws with democracy and the worker cooperatives. But I think the flaws often start with people not being educated about what I would call principles. You know, they have to be something that are far more important than anything else. It's not just, you know, being able to say, oh, I have one vote in democracy. Well, you might have a group of people. I mean, that's why our country literally was set up the way it was as a democratic republic, because they knew that most of the people that were coming here initially were not literate. So you don't want illiterate people, you know, making decisions so in democracy doesn't work. And I'm not saying we have a lot of illiterate people now, but when you have a lot of people who don't understand basic compassion and what that means, just that basic common sense understandings we've talked about, and you put them in the democratic process, it's not going to work, right? There has to be, people have to understand compassion and feel compassion and put compassion ahead of everything else. Then I think democracy can work, right? Once people are educated about the issues. That's my view. But this has been great. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, anything you'd like to share, because I want to share this with the world as soon as possible.
And just on the topic about compassion, I don't think compassion is something that can be taught. Like, it's something that life is teaching you. Like, it cannot be taught at school. I don't think the fact that people will make decisions based on selfishness and stuff like that will actually make any difference, because the RIC is a process. It is the same process that we all been through when we had to leave the house and stop believing that the parents which are there to take care of us have all the answers about what is good for us. Like, you know, we had to make that decision ourselves. So yeah, we had to make that decisions to leave that place that we call home, because like those parents were doing this for our own good. They were there to educate us and give us what we need to hear and what we need to do. But until we make that decision to get that power back and make that decision on our own behalf, then those people will not give it back to us. So it's time for us to rise as an adult and becoming politically powerful and becoming capable of making our own decisions and learn from the mistakes we're going to make, because we're not all wise and we are all making mistakes every day. And it's the only process that nature put in place to teach us how to grow. So let's make mistakes as quick as possible. Let's learn from those mistakes, and let's learn that compassion is the way, because you cannot force people to believe that. They will have to learn from themselves. Like all the people who tell me, like, why are you not using your guns and shoot the cops who are beating you up? And like, you know what? Because those people are parents like us. They're moms and dads, and they have their own problem, and they have their own issue, and they have their family to feed, and they have their stress, and they have their things to do. So they are not the problem. Like the problem is the fact that we are all powerless. It's not the military, it's not the economy, it's not the climate, it's not the rich, it's not the poor, it's not the left, the right, or whatever, the religion. It's the fact that we are all powerless. And until people will get that power back, and I'm saying back, like we never had that power, but until the people will get this power, they will remain divided, weak, and inefficient. So the whole idea is not about being perfect and wise straight away. The whole idea is to be willing to grow and come from that teenage space into this adult space and learn, because life is all about that. It's all about making experience, learning, and readjusting.
That's fantastic. Roman, how can people learn more about you? What's some websites or some media that people can go to learn more about you and RIC?
So I have a YouTube channel, but I forgot the name. It must be Referendum Initiated by the Citizens. So there's a YouTube channel, Referendum Initiated by the Citizen, but the bigger aspect of my work is on Facebook. There's a RIC Referendum Initiated by the Citizen Roman Light, so you can easily find me. There's lots of videos, educational, where I'm going deeper into the RIC and how to implement it and how to put in place like different strategies, because there's not just one. There's one goal, but there's just one path. Like there's going to be multiple paths, and each country will have different ways to implement it. But the whole idea is that we need to agree on the basics, which is something like 1% of the population should be able to trigger that referendum. So if 1% of the population put a petition in place and have that 1% signature, then we can trigger that national referendum. And if the majority of the referendum is voted, then this is automatically implied into the domain. So if it's legal, normally 50% of the population should be enough. If it's constitutional, then maybe 70% of the population need to agree. So they can have like management over there. And on the full spectrum of the people who are in capacity to vote, there needs to be at least 70% of the people who can vote that will vote for yes, no, or for yes or no. If they say, I don't know, if there's more than 30% which say, I don't know, then we need to do that referendum again. It means that the people need more time. There's too many people who need more time to study the idea. So for the people who think that minority will take over the rest of the thing, like, no, it's not going to be possible. Because first of all, like no one will really let this happen. And second, if you don't know, then nothing can be imposed on you. So normally the first tour will give you yes, no, or I don't know. And if there's too many people, 30% of the people who say I don't know, then 3 months later, you will only have yes or no. Like you will give you 3 more months to think about it and make your research. And in 3 months after, then you will have to say yes or no. So there's many ways we can manage this and make something that will be fine-tuned and perfectly balanced with the culture, the ideas, the population, the demography, and everything. Like everything can be fine-tuned, but it has to come from us. We cannot let those people in power take this power from us and tell us what we have to think, how we have to think, and what we have to do. Because this doesn't make any sense. Just the fact that all the constitution on earth has been written by the politics doesn't make any sense. Because the constitution, they should be afraid of it. They should be scared of the constitution. So how the hell are you writing the laws that are limiting your own power? Like
That's right.
In which reality this is okay? In which world this is okay to have people in power making the rule or defining the rule of their own boundaries and their own limits? Like it doesn't make any sense at all. But again, common sense has been completely lost. So what I'm doing is basically just bringing back those simple ideas, and I hope that this will resonate with more and more people, which seems to work, and that we're all going to come together. So if some people want to be in touch with me, RIC, RIC, Referendum Initiated by the Citizen, Roman Light. That's my Facebook page. I think we're already 5,000 or something like that in
Fantastic.
2 weeks. And now I'm organizing the RIC America, the RIC Canada, the RIC Australia, the RIC UK. Today we just have the RIC UK. We have the RIC Norway, which is coming. The RIC Sweden, which is coming. So
wow,
the octopus is spreading pretty quickly. It seems that.
So you have RIC in America. You have RIC in America.
Yeah. We have the Yellow Vest. They haven't put the name RIC. It's going to happen soon. I think they changed it. There's a RIC Canada. There's a RIC America. There's a RIC Australia. There's a RIC UK. And Sweden, Norway are on the way. Ireland is on the way as well. So in the next few days, we should have at least 10 countries which are using the keywords Yellow Vest RIC, and which is very important because the Yellow Vest movement is just another Occupy. If you don't bring the solution, if you don't bring the federating solution that bring power back to the people, then the Yellow Vest is a useless movement. It's just going to be taken by extreme right or extreme left, and people are going to complain, oh, well, like again, that has been taken by those people who are paid to do that. Like
that's right.
Government are paying people to create fake things and spread fake news and fake information. So like the RIC is about being responsible. So if some people resonate with that, just get close, bring your vote, bring your energy to supporting the people who are in these different groups. And they're just gonna. It's very new. Like it's just a few weeks old, so everything is still doable. But be careful, because every time you're going to join a Yellow Vest movement, you're going to give your energy to someone, even if it's just a number, if it's just one more number, you're going to give the energy to someone that could potentially use that against yourself by creating again division. And there's many groups who already start to do that. I saw a few in Canada and Australia. Some groups are starting to speak about immigration and racism and stuff like that. So the media love that. They jump on that. Absolutely. They're starting to say, oh, look, the Yellow Vests are racist people. The Yellow Vests are against immigrants and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, it's just people who create those pages. It's not the people again. The RIC is such a powerful idea that this can change the whole world in the blink of an eye. People completely underestimate the power of a simple idea, and that simple idea is time is coming. So just be a part of it. Get in touch with me, or just get in touch with those different groups. But pay attention that Yellow Vest or Gilets jaunes needs to be next to RIC. If it's not, just ask why. Because if the people don't understand the RIC, then they're not the right people you want to work with.
So Gilets jaunes, RIC.
My page is Referendum Initiated by the Citizen, but they can check Yellow Vest RIC.
Yellow Vest RIC, okay.
Yellow Vest RIC, yeah. So there's but they can just come on my page, and then there's a pin post which will direct the different groups who are trustable and who really guarantee the integrity of the message.
Fantastic.
Which is hard. It's really hard to really guarantee that. Like I've been attacked already by many trolls who are trying to say, oh, Roman is like blah blah blah, Roman is blah blah blah. So my message is really clear: peaceful protesters, smart civil disobedience, no political parties, no religion, no union, and only one revendication, which is a referendum initiated by the citizen. And it's really makes their life really tough to attack me, because like I don't fit in any box. I can't fit into a racist box. I can't fit into political box, into religious box, they can't hate me because they don't have any things to put me in. Yeah. So they try to spread false things, but yeah, it's funny because I think people are much more wise than we even think they are. And that's what the RIC is all about, is allowing natural wisdom to be expressed.
That is fantastic. I really appreciate that you have done this, and it's an honor to have this conversation. And my focus has been essentially on cultural and economic transition, but I see that continuing. But I see RIC as being as being a way to help educate myself and others about how to really do what needs to be done for the whole, as well as, not leaving out the individual, because and I like that, because nobody can attack you when you're really for everyone, right? It's brilliant. It really is. Thank you so much. And let's stay in touch. Absolutely. To make sure that we know who's who and what's what, and what friends do. So I feel like I've made a friend today. This is fantastic. Roman, thank you so much for taking part of your evening. It's morning for me in the Los Angeles area. But stay in touch. And again, thank you so much for being on the Nowman Show. This is Share Your Light with everyone, wherever you are. And you're watching the Nowman Show. Until next time, always stay in the present moment, always.
Let's all try to put the pieces back together.